rationality isn't always rational. Our goal is to try to be rational. Our goal is to sit down and have a good systemic process. Here's a process, bang, 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 bang. But sometimes we let our own internal aspects, our own internal engines inside of our head influences. A lot of times we engage in what's called satisficing. In other words, it's good enough. And there are times it should be good enough. If you continually try to be 100% accurate, okay, you may drive people absolutely crazy and you just bog the whole machine down. I've seen it happen many times. Sometimes 90% is fine or 95% is fine. You don't always have to be 100% accurate. When I do long-term planning, my goal is, because long-term, by definition, strategic planning is 3 years and beyond, I want to be 80% accurate in that 3 years. Now, that's when I'm making the plan. I want to, because no matter how smart I am, how much data I have, I am unable to not know what's going to happen in 3 years. There will be so many things pop into the oven that you don't want to sit down and be cooked over here in the process because of the fact, I'm going to be 100% correct. You can't do it. You don't know what the world's going to be like in 3 years from now, but you can probably have a good sense of probability. So if I'm 80% accurate, that is good enough. Satisficing, make certain that you're paying attention. And if it's good enough, sometimes if you can have a higher value alternative, if you can kick it up from 80% to 90%, grab that if you possibly can, but make certain that you're counting the cost in the process, because the cost for that 10% idea of 3 years from now of being accurate at a much higher level, if it's more expensive to get there than you're going to earn, it's a waste of your time and effort. So be careful about it. Don't oversimplify the decision-making process. I can make that decision. Yeah, go ahead and do it. You need to pause sometimes and avoid making the decision when too many choices are presented. Sometimes if you're in a room and you're making all these choices, or it's so simple, well, just do that. Sometimes just doing that's going to have a repercussion you would never, ever see. Avoid making decisions when all the choices are out there. Be cautious when people throw things at you nonstop, and don't dismiss them. I've had a couple times, we had different strategy meetings. We're laying out our strategic plan. We went through, we have the news, basically big sheets of paper. People put different alternatives up and people voted on it. And some of the things that people came up with for ideas to do, it's a matter of looked like they're really dumb. And then you start looking at it and you have people looking at it, and then you start evaluating that, well, that can work. Well, it's out of, we've never done it that way before. Yeah, but that can work, and it's going to do this. Sometimes when you have too many choices, it can scramble everything to the point that you can't think well, because there's so many alternatives and people are pushing their idea because they own their idea. And if their idea gets implemented, it feels like they're in charge in the process. Yes, that's all true. We're humans. A lot of us do like recognition, but the reality is be cautious. And a lot of times emotions, they come from preferences that are deep inside of us. We have our moods and emotions. Sometimes you walk in and you've had a really bad day at home. You had a bad day driving into work, and now you go into a meeting and somebody's going to sit there and dump that. There are people sometimes that just because they feel in a bad mood, they torpedo everything around them. That's wrong as well. Emotions serve as information and decisions. And sometimes our reaction, we have to pay attention to it. Take ourselves out of the environment, but pay attention to the emotion about the decision. Sometimes there's something that's churning on the inside, and on the inside, there's some type of a conflict and you feel uncomfortable and you can't put your finger on it. Why? It's kind of like taking a test. Sometimes when you look at question number 1, your brain is set that and your brain doesn't function. But later on, as you take the test, it's a 50-question test, and you're sitting there looking at question number 12, all of a sudden a light bulb hits, you have an answer for question number 1. Sometimes your instincts, your intuition, that thing that we call our gut, which is really kind of a pretty ugly term, okay, but that our gut reaction is that thing is not right, and I got to come back to that. Sometimes you need to come back. A lot of intuitive aspect of it, it exists because the best course of action comes without conscious reasoning. Sometimes your intuition is right. Some of us are wired that way. If you take the Myers-Briggs test, MBIT, so you go through, some of us have an automatic intuitive thing. The second letter is going to be either an S for reasoning or an I for intuition. So in my case, my second letter is intuitive. Sometimes I can sit down and make a judgment about something, and I want to go gather data after I make the judgment, but a lot of times that data is to confirm my intuition about the pathway we should follow. Other people, sometimes I'm getting the data for them because those S people with the second letter has an S, they want to have the rationality all down pat. I do it for them because they already kind of know what I want to do. In the meantime, yes, I do violate some of the protocols you were talking about, but the reality is that gut feeling you have is an emotional signal. Sometimes we come so quickly, we just dive into the aspect that non-conscious analysis. Well, that's obviously the right thing to do. Be careful about it. Sometimes it's really good though. Okay, you're better off being contemplative than being decisive. Think about things. I like to sit down if I'm doing a project, if I have a decision, I like to look at the options. And in my case, I like to sleep on it and finalize it the next day. Whether it's writing the paper, whether it's doing a presentation, whether it's writing the play. Before I finalize things, if I'm doing something over here, I want to process it overnight to see what it's going to be like. Combine your intuition with logical analysis. Sometimes your instinct is to jump, but you need to stand at the edge of the cliff before you jump. Rationalize, gee, if I make this jump and the gap is too big, I might fall down, and that wouldn't be very comfortable. Before you jump, pay attention. Sometimes you want to revisit a decision when there's too much emotions that are involved, and use scenario planning. If I do this, what'll happen over here? Well, what if I did this over here? What's going to happen over here? Use scenario planning. A lot of it is that the confirmation bias, well, I chose the best way. See this over here, this. Sometimes we create a plan as to why our decision was the best. Escalation to commitment, sometimes we invest and we put money in the bad decision and put more money into it and more money into it. I was at a college and we had a building, and the building was built with a really poor foundation. Literally, we had a building that was sinking. It was sinking a little bit. You would go in the building and all the doors and the door frames, on one side, you'd have the door over here, but the doors kept on sticking. So you shave a little bit off the door, shave it a little. So over a period of 15 years, the building actually had a cant to it a little bit. Well, the soil underneath it was so loose that the building didn't have a solid foundation, and it was gradually sinking, not quite to the level of the Tower of Pisa in Italy, but our own version was happening right in front of us. The solution was to pour in about $3 million of concrete footings and go down 70 feet deep to help support the building. So that decision was made by somebody else. Fortunately, it wasn't my decision. Okay. And then they had to go back and everything else because our board questioned it. What would it be cheaper to tear the building down? Well, to tear the building down cost 1.1 million, and to rebuild it costs about 7. Well, but if we rebuilt it, so we had to work it, and we had, instead of going further in depth, in this case, literally in depth, we had to back up and go back and be careful because people were so busy escalating. Nobody had to stop and think. Sometimes you have, well, because of this, well, because of this, well, because of this. We've already spent $500,000. We need to go forward with this and keep on spending more money. You'll see this sometime in your career pathway, and you don't understand why to keep on pushing it, but it just happens as you go through. Change the decision makers sometimes. Sometimes the decider isn't a good decider. Sometimes you have to sit down and stop it. Says, okay, stop. We're going to take a moratorium on this. We need to back up and see what's going on over here. Check the facts, get feedback from other people as to what's going on. Sometimes you either get rid of the decision maker, have a new decision maker, or work to change the decision maker's mind if you have to work with that same person. Rationality, a lot of times we do this satisficing, where we oversimplify everything. Sometimes we rely on intuition, but always take time out to evaluate, use rationality accompanied by intuition, revisit what you decided later, and really use scenario planning. It's a huge help. Rationality and decision making it makes sense, but be cautious in the process, because too often we're a little bit prejudiced towards a solution that isn't always the most rational one. Take care.